He wrote letters from a war he knew he might never return from, but every word carried love, hope, and a final goodbye.
The cold wind swept across the muddy battlefield as Private Jonathan Hay sat hunched inside a half-dug trench, the dim light of a flickering lantern casting trembling shadows on his weathered face. He held a small piece of paper in his trembling hands, a letter, worn and creased, yet his most precious possession. It was from home. Dear Jonathan, it began in neat cursive. We miss you every day. The children ask when you'll be back. I tell them soon. He smiled faintly, picturing his wife, Mary, sitting by the window with their 2 children, Emily and little Jack. That image was his anchor in this endless sea of chaos. Around him, the trench echoed with distant explosions and muffled cries. Yet, in that small corner of the war, time seemed to pause. Jonathan dipped his pen into the ink bottle, the tip shaking slightly. He started writing back. My dearest Mary, the nights here are cold and long, but thoughts of you keep me warm. Sometimes, I close my eyes and imagine Emily's laughter echoing through the house. Tell her her father loves her more than the stars above the field. He paused as a shell exploded nearby, spraying mud across his paper. He quickly shielded the letter, his heart pounding. It's okay, he whispered to himself, it's okay. Private Miller, his closest friend, crawled beside him, writing again. Hayes? Miller asked, forcing a grin despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Jonathan nodded. It's the only thing that keeps me sane, Miller. These letters. They remind me I'm still human. Miller chuckled softly. Then write fast, before the next wave comes. The 2 men shared a brief smile, a fragile flicker of humanity in a place where life had lost its meaning. Hours later, when the order came to move forward, Jonathan folded the unfinished letter carefully, tucking it into the inner pocket of his uniform. I'll finish it when we return, he told himself, though deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, what if we don't? As dawn broke, the soldiers climbed out of the trench, rifles in hand. The morning fog mixed with the smell of gunpowder, turning the air heavy. Jonathan looked up at the pale sun and whispered a silent prayer, not for victory, but for the chance to write one more letter. In his heart, he knew every letter he sent could be his last.
The rain had not stopped for 3 days. Water filled the trenches, soaking boots and freezing bones. Jonathan sat under a torn canvas, clutching another piece of paper, a new letter from Mary. The paper was damp, the ink smudged, but her words shone through the blur. Jonathan, Emily lost her first tooth yesterday. She told me she wants to save it until you return, so you can see it yourself. A lump formed in Jonathan's throat. The image of his daughter, smiling proudly, warmed his heart in the middle of this frozen nightmare. Private Miller leaned over. Your little one again, Jonathan nodded. She's growing up without me, Miller. I'm missing everything. Miller gave a faint smile. At least she's waiting for you. That's something. A distant boom shook the trench. Dirt rained down from above. Both men ducked instinctively. When the rumble faded, Jonathan looked up at the gray sky and whispered, please let me see them again. That night, by lantern light, he wrote his reply. My darling Mary, tell Emily I'm keeping her tooth safe in my heart until I come home. Tell Jack to be brave for his mother. I dream of holding you all again. If only this war would end. He stopped mid-sentence as a scream echoed from down the trench. A medic rushed past, carrying a wounded man whose uniform was drenched in red. Jonathan's eyes followed them, his heart pounding. This was the truth of war. One letter home could be interrupted by death itself. As dawn crept over the battlefield, Jonathan sealed the letter and tucked it beside his heart, hoping it would reach her before fate reached him. Days turned into weeks. The 22nd Regiment had been pushed deep behind enemy lines, cut off, cold, and starving. Communication was nearly impossible, yet Jonathan still wrote every night, even when there was no way to send his words home. Mary, I don't know if this letter will ever reach you. Supplies are low, and the men are tired. But I think of your face, and somehow I find the strength to fight another day. Miller lay nearby, coughing from exhaustion. Hayes, he murmured, if we don't make it out, promise me you'll write to my mother. Jonathan looked at him, eyes glistening. Don't say that. We're getting out of here together, but deep down, both knew not everyone would. By the third day, only a handful of them were left. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs. In the distance, enemy flares painted the night sky red. Jonathan pulled out a single bullet and stared at it, then back at the unfinished letter. He smiled bitterly. Greater than maybe words are stronger than bullets, he whispered. When rescue finally came, Jonathan had lost half his company, but not his will to write. After weeks of silence, Mary finally received a bundle of letters. Her trembling hands opened them one by one, her tears falling over each line. Emily and Jack sat beside her, listening as she read Jonathan's words aloud. If I don't return soon, promise me you'll keep the garden blooming. Every flower will remind me of you. Mary pressed the letter to her heart. We will, Jonathan, she whispered, back at the front. Jonathan watched the sky turn orange with explosions. Miller had not survived the last battle. Jonathan buried him quietly and placed a small wooden cross above his grave. Then he sat down and began another letter, one that felt heavier than all before. Greater than Mary, I buried a good man today. He wanted his mother to know he died with courage. Tell her for me if I can't. Sometimes I wonder if these letters are the only proof we ever lived. The rain poured harder, but Jonathan kept writing, his ink mixing with the falling drops, words bleeding like his heart. Orders came at dawn, an all-out push across the enemy line. The men lined up silently, faces pale but eyes steady. Jonathan tucked his last letter inside his coat. It wasn't finished yet, but he promised himself he would complete it. After the battle, gunfire erupted. The ground shook, smoke filled the air. Jonathan ran forward, his rifle clutched tight, his heart pounding louder than the explosions. He saw comrades fall beside him, but he kept going, one step, then another. In that chaos, he thought only of Mary, of Emily's laughter, of Jack learning to walk. A sharp pain tore through his shoulder. He fell, gripping the unfinished letter now soaked in blood. With trembling fingers, he wrote his last words. Greater than Mary, tell them, I kept my promise. I fought to come home. The page slipped from his hand as darkness took him. Weeks later, Mary stood at the door as a male officer handed her a sealed envelope marked returned, deceased. Her heart shattered. She opened it slowly, reading Jonathan's final words through tears. My love, if you're reading this, it means my journey ended here. But remember, love never dies. Every sunrise, every laugh of our children, will carry my spirit home. She clutched the letter to her chest and sank to her knees. Emily wrapped her arms around her mother. Is Daddy gone? She whispered. Mary smiled through tears. No, sweetheart. He's watching us from the stars. Years later, Emily stood in the same garden her father once wrote about. The flowers bloomed beautifully, roses, daisies, lilac, each planted by her mother to honor Jonathan's memory. She opened a small box filled with old letters, yellowed with time. Inside was her father's handwriting, shaky, brave, eternal. Emily, if you ever read this, know that your father was never far away. The world may change, but love remains. Promise me you'll keep writing. Even when words are all that's left. Emily smiled softly. I will, Papa. She placed the letter under a fresh white rose, looked up at the sky, and whispered, Goodbye, and thank you. The wind rustled through the petals, carrying her words into the heavens. Somewhere beyond, her father smiled.